Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me for another segment of Alisa on the Mic podcast with friends. Today is not one of those lighthearted conversations that I'm used to having. It is one of the ones that is kind of close and dear to my heart, and obviously to the hearts of those who are on the panel with me today. We are going to be talking about the racial divide in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, who has now been laid to rest, but the protest and the outrage and the unrest is still going strong. Today I have Miss Nanette Allender, who's an actress here in the Atlanta area. We have Sharon Tinsley, who is a 911 operator here in the Atlanta area. We have Marc Lazarre from Lakeland, Florida, who is also an actor. We have Javonna McCoy, who is a mother of 3 Black boys hailing from Columbus, Ohio. We also have Erik, Dillard, who is an actor, a philanthropist, and a all-around stand-up guy out of Atlanta, Georgia, by way of Columbus, Ohio. And we have Officer James, who is an officer of 27 years here in the Georgia area. And we just want to be able to sit down and have a candid conversation about what's plaguing our community and our society as of late. So I do want to say hello, everybody, and welcome to the panel. I know it was not.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I know it's not an easy conversation to have, but I thank you all for taking the opportunity to sit down with me and kind of have this conversation. I do want to start off kind of just jumping right in. I guess we're going to go straight to the cop on the show or on the panel. Officer James, I wanted to kind of just jump right in and ask, is it that Black people or Black offenders or Black people who are apprehended, is it that the officer is afraid of Black people or intimidated by Black men, or is that the issue? Do you feel like, or can you speak from the standpoint of maybe the murders that we're seeing that are being videotaped, because of course there probably are more than what we're seeing. I know that there are, but is it racially motivated?
Well, I've been in the game for 27 years. When I first started with my department, it was a predominantly white department. And I've had some officers, they got back to me that they thought I was kind of odd. And I would kind of, like peep their card. Of course, you're familiar with V103 radio station, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, it was brought to my attention that they looked at me weird because I listened to V103. And now, as times changed, it's opposite. It's a predominantly African American police department. I'm the only white officer there. Well, only white male officer there. So, over the years, you can, like I said, you can kind of peep somebody's card. You could just the body demeanor and how they would react and act nervous and stuff. But I haven't really been around a lot of white officers in a long time, so really can't speak on that. But I know when I first started, I can kind of see that they were nervous, and it's just, I guess their surroundings. I had a lot of diversity growing up, and I think that's why, Lisa, me, and I've had a lot of compliments as a police officer. I've been called one of the coolest police officers I ever met.
Absolutely.
And so, I have no problem, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I've never had any use of excessive force or anything. And I think a lot of it, like I said, is a lot of diversity training, and plus, I've been a martial artist for nearly 30 years, and I'm always surrounded by every ethnic group there is, and I think that's what's kept me level-headed.
Do you think that's part of the problem? Do you think it stems from a lack of diversity, a lack of being around African Americans, a lack of being around just other ethnicities? Do you think that is what perpetuates that fear for other?
I think so. Yeah.
So do you think at this point, and I guess this is a question for not just you, but for everybody on the panel, if there's a cop on, so we can just go straight to the George Floyd. We'll use that. Not that it hasn't been others, but since that's the one that's in the news, we'll go with that one.
Okay.
the force that they used, is that appropriate?
No, that was no. They don't teach that. That officer used excessive force. It's a disgrace, and I don't know. Are you familiar with what happened in Atlanta over the weekend
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
about the taser incident?
The taser incident, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Now I've watched both videos, and Mr. Floyd, he was cooperative because they showed an angle where they had him handcuffed and he was
Mm-hmm.
by the wall, and then when he walked to the car, he fell. They said he stiffened up. I don't know if he had a panic attack or what, but he did nothing to make them mad. Okay, now what happened in Atlanta, I do not condone what they did, but there was a portion of the tape where the officer opened up the door and he was holding the door and the car drove off. And that could have probably broke his arm, I believe that officer got into his feelings and, he just couldn't turn it off. And no matter how bad it was, there was nothing, you don't tase somebody in a car.
Okay.
Okay. And I believe they just got into their feelings and they just couldn't shut it off, and then that's, and going back to, now this is my big high point with the Mr. Floyd incident. That particular officer has been I know he's killed at least one person. I know he shot somebody that was running from him. That we're taught that if somebody's running from you, you don't shoot. As much as I blame that officer, I blame that department even more because it's negative retention. They knew they had a bad apple and they turned a blind eye to it, and it bit them in the ass.
I agree 100%.
And it bit them in the ass. And that's the main thing is, it was a red flag. I say it was a red flag in 3D. Okay. Mm-hmm. And they looked over the flag, they looked under the flag, they looked around the flag, but they wouldn't look directly into the flag. Well, so as much as I fought that officer, whatever his name, Mike Chavis or whatever, I fought that department even more. And the Asian officer, just a month ago, they settled for $25,000 because he had a guy handcuffed and was punching him in the back of the head. So,
well, here's my I'm sorry. Is that okay to jump in? I'm sorry. Is that okay to jump in?
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I just had a question. I read, I don't know if it's true, that this dude, the guy, the evil, are we allowed to curse? Fucking bastard, the guy who murdered.
Yeah.
The guy who murdered him. I heard that he was training the other officers. Why would you why would you even retain him? But why would you have this person? And is that why? And that's no excuse, by the way, just an explanation. But is that why no one said anything? Why did no one stop this?
I know they were saying that the two guys who had their knees in the back were trained. That's the narrative that they're coming out with now. I'm not so sure. Maybe they were training, maybe they weren't, in my opinion. And again, Officer James can probably talk on it, or somebody on the panel can give their input as well. But the bottom line is they knew right from wrong. Is the whole thing. And whether you were training, whether you weren't training, I'm trying to understand in what part of that did it take you having your knee in his neck,
right?
You two had your knees in his back and on his legs. Like, how could you expect him to breathe that way?
Right.
Can I stress something? By design, your body is able to defend itself with whatever's in front of you. Okay. By design, your body is not able to defend what's behind you. So with Mr. Floyd on his stomach, he was defenseless. Yeah. I don't care if he was Mike Tyson, Bruce Lee, Ric Flair. I don't care who he is. He is defenseless. Now you handcuff him, and he is defenseless as a baby being born. And you put those cats, those officers on him. No. Now let me put this out there. There's nothing wrong, depending on how you the circumstances to be. You could put somebody on the ground and handcuff them, but as soon as you handcuff them, within seconds, you put them up in a prone position. you don't keep them belly down. And let's say you did keep them belly down. You sure don't put pressure on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To me, it sounds like he was just a ticking time bomb, and he should have been off the force a long time ago.
Yeah, that's
what it sounds like. I agree with you when you said you blame it on that department, not just him, because there's no way he should have that many infractions, and he's still on the force. There's no way.
Well, this is my philosophy about that, and it's just my philosophy. Maybe they're short-staffed, and maybe they need a body. Maybe they need a body, and they're probably like this. They're probably keeping their fingers crossed.
Yeah, but
show out tonight.
And I thought the same thing, but keep a bad apple. You know what I mean? Yeah. Keep him on the force just because you're short-staffed.
Yeah,
but I think we've seen. I'd
rather be short-staffed than have to deal with that.
I'd rather be short-staffed than have to deal with someone like that.
I think that if we look at like even other structures though, like in our society, that we have all been in situations where they've kept someone who's bad, and it's like, how do you deal with that? Like this, of course, this is the most serious thing ever, but it's like I'm looking at the mental state of some of the other officers that were there. When I'm looking at the video, they're looking away. So I'm wondering what type of power did he have? So I guess maybe our officer that's here tonight. Can you explain to us? What was the pecking order? Was there one? Were they in a position to where they could have said something? If they did, and say that he did take his foot off of George's neck before he died, what kind of repercussions would that have brought when they got back to the office? Like, what are the external forces that were at work?
Yeah.
I don't want to be a Monday morning quarterback, but if I would have arrived at the scene, I would have been locked up because I would have beat that officer up. I would have snatched him off and beat him up. Because he was killing the guy. The guy's been on the force for 19 years.
Okay.
He has no rank. So that shows you right there, you usually get rank 5, 6, 7, 8 years into the game.
Okay.
For 19 years, and you're still a regular officer.
So he wasn't over them? Is that what we're telling him? He wasn't like, he didn't have a...
He doesn't have a title. He's an officer. He doesn't have.
Wow.
No, wait.
Had the same rank, so it's not like they would have been reprimanded for speaking out against him. Right.
But even with that, even though he doesn't have a rank, you guys all know we've all worked places where people that don't have rank still have that kind of pull.
They have an entitlement.
They got that title in their head where you don't know what type of conversations he's had with them, or out here you don't go against me, or you don't, because I'm with Erik. It looked like that officer, the same way the guys that pushed the Buffalo cops who pushed down the white guy that hit his head on. You know what I mean? It's like this is a culture.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah. This is whereas it used to be there's just a few bad cops amongst the good cops. It's looking like more like it's a bunch of bad cops and there might be a sprinkle of good cops. You know,
that's what it feels like a lot of times.
The good ones aren't speaking up. They're not speaking out against the bad cops. They're just covering up for them.
And that goes back to what Erik said. Is there some type of reprimand that happens for officers that speak out against the bad ones? Is there a reprimand? Is there a unseen code in the system?
There is. There's, you could be labeled as a snitch. Oh, he snitches on people. So that could, people don't want to be labeled as that, and I think that's broad in everything, but, in police work, people backbite, they go around telling stuff, but that's the only thing I can think. But
I think so often for me, it looks like two different, it's like two different gangs.
It's so embarrassing. And like I said, I think, I've been in situations where people have got in my face and cussed me out, and I've been able to stay calm. And I think a lot of that deals with my martial arts training. Mm-hmm. And I think these guys, unfortunately, I think some police officers, they were bullied in school, and low insecurity, and now they got a badge, and now they're going to get their get back.
Now, exactly. Now they abuse their power. Now they feel like, I'm in control now. And the Black community, we've been saying this for a long time. It seems like you said, a lot of police officers were bullied. So now they're like, abusing their power. They're taking their anger and all their frustrations out on people, on the civilians. So that right there, I feel like that needs to be addressed. If everyone can see that there is some issue, or they seem like they have some type of mental issue, or they have Napoleon complex or what have you, they're all abusing their power. So something needs to be done about that. Everyone can see it. It's clear as day.
But I think even in seeing it, I think even now we can just talk about the rioting. Everybody was like, oh, we haven't had riots like this since Rodney King, and we haven't had this and we haven't had that. But it appears now that everybody can see it. But why has it taken this for white people at large? And this is for, everybody on the panel, but more specifically for Lisa, Sharon, and Officer James. Why is it taking this to get such a robust reaction out of the white community?
I think some of it is this has just been a horrible year, and with the corona, everybody's just got that cabin fever, and everybody feels like everything's taken away from them. You can't go to the movies, you can't go to the restaurant, and then when you just see this is just the tip of the iceberg. It just the straw that broke the camel's back,
Yeah,
and then what pissed me off was the guy was so arrogant. He kept giving them arrogant, and it looked like he was just getting his jollies from his knee.
I just wanted.
I guarantee you, 1-on-1, that guy would get spanked in a real fight. But as long as he has his guns, as long as he has his cronies with him, he's a tough guy. But 1-on-1, he's a wet noodle.
But honestly, I feel like that is something with a lot of this stuff, even with Ahmaud Arbery. You know what I mean? It's like they're getting their rocks off, or people are getting their whatever their fix by intimidating, overpowering, and murdering Blacks. But I want to know why. Like, why are Black people such a target? You know what I mean? And I know, Sharon, I guess I can come to you. You're the mother of 2 biracial children.
Yes, ma'am.
And I know that when we've had these conversations as of late, we're talking about, the protesting and the rioting, and even your kids have spoken out about, pretty much they picked a side. You know what I mean? How is it for you?
They're on opposite sides. My children are on opposite sides, surprisingly.
And and can you elaborate on that? Let's let you elaborate on that.
So my daughter is very liberal minded, and she is of the opinion that we need to just abolish the police altogether, that the whole system is broken and it's time to just scrap it and start over. She's done some research. Today was the first time she and I discussed this, but she's done some research, and apparently this is a movement that has been going for quite some time, and she feels like that's probably the way the country needs to go. And you and I kind of discussed that earlier today. My son, on the other hand, is of the mindset that right is right and wrong is wrong, and color has nothing to do with it, which is odd because my daughter is a college graduate and my son just got out of the military and he has a criminal record. And I mean, they are completely opposite children, and he is the one that has been through the criminal justice system, and he's on the side of most cops are good and there are a few bad apples that spoil the bunch. And my daughter's on the opposite side and she's never been through it. So I think everybody's life experiences kind of lead them to the opinions that they have. And I really don't know how my children develop such different opinions. I mean, they grew up in the same household. They're only 4 years apart in age. I think they probably both have a little of my opinion in them, and both of them are also a lot to the far left and right of my opinion also. So it's interesting, and I really don't know. I don't know the answer. I know that there's a problem. The criminal justice system is definitely broken, but I don't think abolishing the system is exactly the answer either. So
do you think that by any chance, I know we've worked together before, and I've expressed to you some of my feelings that I had working at that particular place. And do you think you've seen racism? Like, do you think Do you think white people are willfully ignorant, or are they just ignorant? Do you think that what's going on right now, is it something that white people should have taken a stand on before, or do you think they haven't because they've been oblivious, or have they wanted to be oblivious?
Maybe a little bit of both. I definitely have had conversations with people that I work with, that I used to work with, because as you know, 911 is an ever-evolving center. There's never the same group of people for an extended period of time. But I've had conversations with coworkers, and a lot of times, I guess I've told you before that I hope that they're actually just ignorant. Like you live in your own little white world bubble, and you just don't realize what goes on outside of your bubble. I had a white coworker tell me that racism does not exist in America anymore, which was really responded.
What the fuck?
Right, exactly. I responded with the answer, and I told him, I said, until you've driven through South Georgia and you're scared to stop and let your child use the bathroom, you can't tell me that racism doesn't exist in America. When I, as a white woman, am scared to walk into a store with my half-black children, there's a problem. Yeah. In South Georgia, in Brunswick, where Ahmaud Arbery was just killed by a white man, I was with my ex-husband, who is a black man, and our daughter was a newborn, and we were at an alligator farm, because my ex-husband's weird. I don't know why. But, and it was hot. It was Georgia. It was summertime. I went inside with my baby that you could not look at and tell was obviously mixed, because she was a newborn. And I was waiting for my husband and my older child to come in. And when he did, I started talking to him. And a 6-year-old boy came up to me and said, "How do you know him?" And I said, "He's my husband." And this 6-year-old white boy in Brunswick, Georgia said, "But black people can't marry white people."
Wow.
So that happened. That happened to me. And I didn't even know what to say. I just said, "Oh, I didn't know. Nobody told us." So,
So do you feel like white people don't stand up and stick up for what's right as far as race is concerned because of the ostracism from the community? Do you guys feel like there is a certain level of drawback there?
I don't want to interrupt you. Did you want to speak more, Sharon? Because I don't want to interrupt you.
Go ahead. We can come back to Sharon. Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay. I just want to say this. I think there's a big, look, I don't care how woke we all try to feel, we're trying to stay on top of the issues and everything. Look, when the Trayvon Martin thing happened some years ago, I had to literally not speak to, and I'm no longer friends with, people that I knew for years. And it's because they seem to think it had something to do with something as petty as politics. And what I said to them was, this has to do with humanity. You've got to be kidding me if you think that there's any excuse whatsoever. The example that I tried to use, and the person hung up on me, and I'm glad. I said to him, you have a child walking in a neighborhood to go see his dad. He's carrying an iced tea and some candy. And a man who's much older follows him in a truck. Now it's your son. It's your son, okay? How would you feel about that? And how would you feel about that person confronting your son after the police have already told this person, we don't need you to do that? I remember exactly what the words were. We don't need you to follow this person. And this person engages in this confrontation, which ends up in a fight and ends up, shock of shocks, with this young child dead. Now it's your child. You tell me how in any universe that's okay. Tell me how that's okay. And he didn't say anything. And he said, I don't want to talk about this. I said, I'm sure you don't. And he hung up. And that was the last I ever talked to that person.
They don't want to talk about it. But the problem then becomes, which I'm sure everybody else on the panel can attest to, I have a 14-year-old son that I have to have conversations with now. When he just goes out the house, he wants to go run to the store really, really quickly in some sweatpants and he doesn't even own a hoodie. Let's start there. I won't even buy my son a hoodie. So he doesn't own a hoodie, but he wants to run up the street, which is probably a half a mile up the way, in some sweatpants and a little raggedy, something that you might just throw on just to be around the house.
Yeah.
We get into an argument because I want him to put on some jeans and a nice t-shirt, your good tennis shoes, not your slides, just to go run up the street to go grab him some sunflower seeds.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't understand that now that you're still my 14-year-old son, but to them, they're going to look at you like a man because you're big.
That's right.
You know what I mean? You're my height, and you're big. You get what I'm saying? And so what I want to know from you guys is why does it, and even for the Black men on the panel, like, what is it like for you growing up and trying to fight a system that everybody else doesn't seem to understand? But it's like if we're dealing with like white privilege, people don't think that white privilege exists.
It definitely exists.
And
Absolutely, for sure.
I don't know how to get people to understand that just the sheer fact, when you're carrying a baby in a black belly, they're already convicted. They're already going to come out the womb targeted automatically. So when a baby is brewing in a white belly, they're already coming out with an inheritance. And so it makes it difficult to try to talk to a young black boy and tell them they have the right to tell a cop, if you pull my son over, Officer James, he has the right to ask you why. He has that right. But I have to tell my son, you better not ask why. You better put your hands on the steering wheel. You understand what I'm saying? That's not fair to take that right away from you. So I guess for me, I've never been pulled over by a cop. I've never been, to my knowledge, racially profiled. What I have experienced is being in an all-white establishment and people talking about issues that are sensitive to me without any sensitivity. I have been in a workplace where every night we watch the news. Every night the news is what we watch. But when Obama was being reelected, they turned the news, despite me saying that I wanted to watch it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Wow.
So even though we haven't all had the exact same experiences, we hurt the same. So I guess what I want to ask Marc and Erik, both being black men, how do you guys feel about what's going on right now?
Let me let Marc go first, and I think my answer is going to be something we probably don't expect.
Okay.
I mean, with what's going on, unfortunately, I'm not surprised by it. It's basically what's happening right now is like what I was saying. We've kind of reached the tipping point because we as a people, we're all dealing with the pandemic. You know, we're already frustrated. But on top of that, like I said, a lot of people are at home. I know there's a lot of people working, but you know, unemployment is still very high right now. So people actually have time to see it. And then while everybody's hurting, you see somebody who looks like you know, getting gunned down. You know, like in just back to back. You know, you had Breonna Taylor, and you have Ahmaud Arbery. You see, he's just jogging. Things that we all do. It's like he can't even jog, and people be alarmed. And then you see the man on his neck. For me, you know, now that I'm older, and my parents used to do the same thing. They used to want to censor me. Don't do this. Don't wear that. Don't, you know what I mean? Like, don't be in this area. You know, and when you're younger and you have friends of different backgrounds, you just want to live life. You don't understand it. And like I said, it's no disrespect to the officer, but for me personally, I actually just try to stay out of the police's way, even if I'm not doing anything wrong. My philosophy is to just stay out of their way, and I wish I could just feel like they just want to serve and protect everyone equally. Because like you said, I do believe that a vast majority of them are good, but because and there was an analogy that somebody used. It's like if you were going to fly on an airplane and they told you that 95% of the pilots wanted to land you safely, but 5% or 2-3% did not want y'all to land, didn't want you to land, would you get on that airplane? And you probably wouldn't. So for me, I could run into that because anytime I get pulled over, my heart rate is, even if I know that there's nothing on me, there's nothing wrong, when I get pulled over, my heart rate is going to accelerate because in my mind, I'm like, please let this be one of the open-minded officers. Please don't let him be having a bad day. Please don't, you run through all these things in your head. So for me, I just try to stay out of their way. And I don't think I should have to feel like that, but I really just try to stay out of their way. I don't want to tick them off or catch them on a bad day. And I think that instead of, you almost get to a point where even though it's not right, you just kind of assume that that's just how it is. That's my normal. The Trayvon thing actually happened an hour away from where I grew up. And a lot of people, they were surprised, but that's kind of like a rite of passage.
Wow.
I've been the kid walking in a neighborhood and an officer pulls up and says, "What are you doing here?"
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, "I live right up the street. Well, I'm going to take you and we're going to verify that." So it didn't surprise me because, like I said, with the Trayvon, it's an hour away. That's because, unfortunately, like even in my own city right now in Lakeland, and I think every person that's black or a minority knows, you have what's called the black side of town and the white side of town. You know, where you can move around a little bit more freely, and you know, like, hey, if you're over here, you need to get in and get out and do what you need to do because that's not going to be the best place for you to be. Mm-hmm. So I'm not surprised. I think probably the tipping point is I think for just as a human being, you feel like, man, did it take for people to see this to realize that there was really a systemic problem? Because honestly, in order for change to really happen, it's gonna take, because we're what, 13% of the population as a minority. It's gonna take, our white brothers and sisters to be vocal and really speak out against it when, relatives and, like the officer was saying, like that particular officer, what frustrated me about it is that, I relate a lot of things to sports. And in sports, they have what's called a culture. So when I played high school and college basketball, if we did something wrong at the end of practice, it wasn't just the one person that was running. Everybody had to run.
Mm-hmm.
What that resulted in is us keeping everybody accountable because we didn't want to have to run wind sprints at the end of practice. So to me, it's like nobody can tell me in that department in Minneapolis that nobody knew he was like that. Like it couldn't have caught his fellow officers off guard, because men, we have locker room talk, like guys, like you know what I mean? Like there's no way that somebody can tell me that they were caught off guard by that. So to me, that was a culture. I mean, and like the officer said, maybe it was because they were short staffed, but I look at that as a culture, and they said that there was like multiple, like 44 people have been put unconscious in that department or in that state just in the past 5 years. And they say that's 44 people in 5 years. I mean, and they said, experts say that's a very high number. So it's just that's the normal reality. But I think what was the most heartbreaking and I was speaking to my father about it, is that, man, it took that for people to be like, okay, maybe there is some systemic problems that need to be addressed. But, we're open for the dialogue, but I will say that as tired as people or some white people are hearing the race conversation, if they're tired, we're exhausted. You know what I mean? We're exhausted.
I called a friend, and I don't want to interrupt because I know Erik wants to speak, but just real quick, I called a friend of mine 2 days ago, and I said, "Oh my God!" And I hope this will be amusing to you in a way, because it was so ignorant and so. I mean, you think you kind of are understanding, and then you realize just how clueless you effing are. I called her and I said, she's African American, and I said, "My God, it must be exhausting. It must be exhausting being you." And she said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "My God, I'm throwing up. I can't sleep. I had a nightmare the other night, and I'm aware. I'm politically active. I've marched, I don't know how many times, blah, 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 big deal. So what? It didn't make any difference, whatever." And she quoted James Baldwin, and I didn't know the quote about when you wake up every day and you're a black man, you have rage every day. And when she said that, I felt so humbled.
Mm.
Yeah.
For me, so what's interesting about, I'm gonna say me and people like me, is that my experience with race was different. And you've been on my page, Lisa. You know what go down on my page. I'm applauding one week and I get dragged the next week. It's just my life, But and I think a lot of that, the reason for it, I experienced racism, but the racism that I experienced was very covert. It wasn't as overt as, cop pulling you over, drag you out the car, throw you down. That's not what I experienced. My experience with racism was more corporate. So it was a lot of talking around me, a lot of code words, a lot of well, this is the policy that we have to use for this, and the reason why we can't promote you is because this, and the other. You need to take this other class. It was real weird mind games that people would play on me, and all the while they were trying to be my friend. So I grew up, in Columbus, Ohio, and I grew up on the hilltop. So it wasn't the east side of Columbus. For those that know the landscape, the lay of the land, like Livingston and on out, where it was more of like your urban, hood areas, and it wasn't Dublin and Grandview and all that. I was like right in the middle. So a lot of my experiences were they're more multicultural. I have friends from every race, and I'm not going to lie to you, it shielded. And I'm in church at the time, starting to learn my sexuality. I'm an eccentric kid, so a lot of my upbringing was more flowery. I'm not going to lie, it was much more bubblegum, Pollyanna. That was just my world. So it wasn't until, and then I spent time in Japan too, teaching over there. So then it was like I was removed from America altogether for almost like 10 years. And I'm just being, since we're having a kind of conversation, when the Trayvon Martin situation hit, it was like a brick to my head. And not saying that I didn't know about, Emmett Till and just, all of my other people and my ancestors that have been, lynched and killed. It wasn't I didn't know about that. That was the first time that I really saw myself. And I was, confronted with, this is the thing too, you can't be excused from this anymore. You can't not participate in this conversation anymore. You can't laugh this away or find a way to soften it because it's not so bad because you haven't experienced it. And so because I have that experience and things have happened since Trayvon Martin and this, incident after incident after incident. Now that we have these cell phones, it's always been going on, but now that we can record it, we all see it. So now that we're this far in, I'm really like confronted with and totally understanding, if I can dare say, the threat of my Blackness in certain places that I didn't have to look at before. While that's going on, I'm still aware of what the other side talks about and how that mindset is. So a lot of the heat that I catch is that I'm able to actually be, I don't want to say code switcher, but I can kind of be like a conduit. I understand both worlds. I'm not saying I have the answer, but I understand a lot of the logic of both worlds. And because I don't talk all the way one way or the other, I just get beat up on a lot because I'm trying to bring peace. I'm trying to get people to understand that they need to talk to each other and things like that. So it's having just this platform to be able to sit here and just talk to not just my Black family, but my white family too. And we can just have at it and just, it's respectful. It may be ugly, but we're here for this purpose. This is refreshing because this is where I believe that the answers are. The answers are not just in our silos of race or culture. They're in the table talk of, here we all are. If we want to get rid of this oppressive power, with Trump and start basically to rebuild America from the bottom up, we've got to have these conversations. So I don't feel, I didn't mean to go into a tangent there, but just to wrap it up, I don't feel the immediate fear that a lot of my blood, my Black brothers and sisters feel. And it's, I don't know what to call that. I don't know if some people want to call it ignorance. I don't know what it is. I understand it, but I just don't have the same experience. But now that I'm in it, I can actually embrace it and say, okay, this is what the fight is. There's no ambiguity with it. It's not like I'm a Candace Owens. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if you saw that clip.
He's fired, by the way.
Yeah, but that's, I didn't even take up too much time, but that's kind of where my mind is. I'm in it, but I also have a different perspective while I'm in it.
But I think that's why you and I kind of click the way we do, because I feel the same. I was talking to Javonna, and we grew up, we're from Columbus. So that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so
you get it.
Woman, I know, I get it. I grew up in Southfield. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, exactly right.
So I get it. But what I'm saying is, like, I didn't even realize, Javonna, we were just talking about the Black male experience, right? With the cops, okay?
Yeah.
She was like, but wait a minute, I was drug out of my car. And I was blown back. I'm going to let you go ahead and talk about that, but I was blown back because I'm like, how were a woman? You know what I'm saying? But go ahead, Javonna. I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to go down. I got another question for the officer, but go ahead, Javonna.
It happens all the time. In my world around me, it's common. It happens all the time. Sort of like, I forgot who said, I think it was Marc. Whenever the police is around, you just get nervous. Like, even if you're not guilty of doing anything, you just know that, you know the history that they brutalize people, they harass people, even in Columbus, Lisa, they harass people, people of color most of the time, but you just get nervous when you're around the police. So yes, you try to avoid the police by all costs. You'll turn off onto another street just because that is the feeling that they give us.
So it seems like we start, even we're not guilty, but we start doing real suspicious behavior as a result. You know what I mean? It's like you start dipping. I'm a police
even if you're not
I'm like, why is she dipping off? Let me go find her because she might be doing. You see what I'm saying? So
if you're not guilty.
Yeah, it's like you start doing suspicious stuff because you don't want to be stopped.
But my experience, it was about midnight. Me and my mom decided to leave my house. We were hungry. We just wanted to go get something. Me and my mom. It's about midnight, so we leave my house. I make a right turn, and this is over off of Livingston and Hamilton. So y'all know Lisa and Erik. Y'all know about that area.
Yeah.
It's predominantly Black.
Yeah.
I go to make a right turn, and I look up, and there's a police officer behind me with his lights on. So I pull over, and I'm like, "What happened?" So he comes to my car, and I think, I'm not even 100% sure that he asked for my name. I think he asked my name. He did not ask for any license or registration, none of that. He didn't tell me why he pulled me over. He asked me to get out the car. It's midnight. You haven't told me why you put me over. You haven't seen any ID, any insurance, anything. And you're asking me to get out the car. So, of course, I'm a grown woman, and I have the right to ask why. So I'm like, well, why am I getting out of the car? Why did you pull me over? So instead of him telling me why, he insists that I get out the car. So at this point, I am resisting. I'm like, well, hold on. Why am I getting out the car? We went around maybe 2-3 times. I'm like, well, why? So at this time, my mom is pulling her phone out to record because he's trying to open my door.
Oh, no, ma'am.
Yeah. So he reaches in, opens my door, and pulls me out the car. Yes, he's like dragging me out of my car.
No,
yeah, so I didn't resist too much because we all know what can happen.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to be another hashtag. So I didn't resist too much. So he put me in the back of the car, handcuffed me and everything.
Oh, my God.
Come to find out, he claims he pulled me over because I didn't use my signal 100 yards before the stop sign.
Oh, come on. What?
Officer,
that was the
Officer
reason.
James.
That was the reason he pulled me over. I used my signal, just not 100 yards before the stop sign.
So what would you call that, Officer James?
I call that a petty pullover.
Yes.
Some petty. I got pulled over a couple months ago in the city. They said that, and my windows are not very tinted. There's a little tint. I just pulled you over because I couldn't see you when you drove by me. I'm like, what?
Wow.
And then he measured the tint, and then he realized a police officer, and I was like, man, what a petty charge, man. Because I tell you, man, pullovers, believe it or not, with the exception of a domestic call, are very dangerous because you don't know what that person in that front seat has or back seat or whatever. And if you're going to pull somebody over, you better do it for something legitimately, not for not hitting a blinker or some very petty. I know of an officer that, and just keep this in mind too, an officer pulled over somebody because it was about to rain and they noticed that the window was down. Now, be honest with you, there's really nothing wrong with that. It's called a courtesy stop. So you know what you do on that? Hey, it's about to rain. I noticed your window was down. Hey, you might want to roll it up. See you later. Have a good day.
So what business is it yours if I want to ride with all my windows down in the rain?
That's true.
My
That's
car.
true. But this is the key point. As an officer, if you do that, that's not a crime. You cannot ask that person for their ID. And what this officer did was, hey, I noticed it's about to rain. Your windows are down. You might want to roll up. By the way, can I have your ID? And the person gave the ID, and the person came back wanted. And I don't know how it turned out, but if that guy had a good lawyer, they would shoot that down because I mean that was unconstitutional.
So again, how are we supposed to? We've already established that officers can and are, probable for doing things that are pretty unconstitutional. against policy, against a lot of the things that they are quote unquote taught. Even dismantling the police conversation, what are we to do as Black people to get white people to understand that, number one, we're already taught your culture, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of people that I know feel like we mooch off of America. Black people, if they don't like it, they can go back to Africa. If they don't, these are comments that I have heard. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, do you not know that we literally built America?
And
like,
we're dragged here.
You cannot.
And we're dragged here. Like, this wasn't a vacation.
We built, but nobody's taught that. I asked 5 of my white friends to name me 5 things, just 5, because I can name about 50. 5 things that the Black person invented. 5. They couldn't name me 1.
That's a huge problem.
That's a problem. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm not sure if any of you guys can name 5, but I'm just saying that was something that really blew my mind, because we are forced. My kids cannot graduate until they learn Georgia history on top of United States history.
The correct Georgia history, not the whitewash Georgia.
Not the right. So what I'm saying is, yes, we as Black people are supposed to teach our kids, our culture. That's fine too. But what good is it going to do if white kids don't know it either? Because they're walking around with the same attitudes of their parents when we're telling our kids, you built this.
Yeah.
They don't know that we did. So then it's like this constant battle. The same gas mask that they out here using against these protesters, we created that. Right. We came up with the gas mask. We made the lawnmower. We did the air conditioner. We did the lights. We did all of that. And a lot of the stuff we invented was because we got tired of slaving over stuff, because we were the ones that had to do it. So you create stuff so that it's a little easier for you. But how then do we get the narrative out that no, we don't owe America anything. We don't owe nobody nothing. You know what I mean? They sat and burnt down Black Wall Street and Tulsa. Our ancestors worked and paid taxes. Right. And we never reaped the benefits. They didn't reap the benefits of the taxes. We didn't benefit from it. You know what I mean? It's the white culture constantly reaps the benefit of what has taken place on American soil. Well, so how then is it we're at the bottom of the totem pole getting the least of these?
Well, does anybody want to talk about, I personally am for reparations. It won't fix the problem at all, and it'll never make up for the history, which is egregious, never. But it would be a start. And I think it doesn't have to be as complex. I mentioned this the other day. I've talked to a couple of people, 2 people of color, 1 African-American, 1 Asian, and 2 white people about this subject. Not recently, but I'd say a few months ago. And it's funny. The most pushback that I get is from white people. And even if they say, oh yeah, I think that's a good idea, but now how much would it be? Here's the thing. You could tax. Andrew Yang had I don't know if anybody knows who Andrew Yang is, but he was he was a prospect in the Democratic debates. And he's kind of moderate on some things, but he's a very practical fellow. And his thing was talking about universal basic income, which is a separate issue and one that probably definitely needs to be explored. And this is way before the pandemic. So he was pushing for $1,000 for each individual over 18 in America, and that's everyone, even people who are here without documentation, doesn't matter, $1,000 a person. And how you raise those funds are by taxing billion-dollar corporations that pay no taxes, like Apple, like Google, like Facebook. They pay nothing right now. So they pay because they make their money off our eyeballs, right? They make their money off of our orders and our input, all of us. Right. So my thinking was you could also use some of those money from taxes to begin to address reparations. And you probably could do it within a year or so. It wouldn't be difficult to do. And just arbitrarily, my thinking was, well, what was that horrible thing of 40 acres and a mule or whatever that never happened? I was thinking maybe 400,000, 300,000. That's not a lot of money, but it would be enough to amass property, a house, build a business. That's reasonable.
They could even the playing field with being able to.
Yeah, I think it's a start. I don't know if we can ever even it. I don't know.
I agree with you, but I think 40 acres and a mule, I'm cool on that. But what you can do is give us money to be able to buy land. Property.
That's what I'm saying. No, that's what I'm saying.
Being able to do those type of things. And that
Right.
doesn't even if you just said every Black person gets a free education. I mean, that's a start.
Right.
You know
No,
what I mean?
that's what I'm saying. I'm using it amusingly to say 40 acres a mule. It's a joke. It never happened. Nobody got shit, and they got abused and used. I mean, come on. You know your history more than I do. I'm just trying to learn.
Oh, no,
All
no,
I know is
totally.
when you ask about white privilege, if I can go there for just a second, is this okay? I don't want to take up
Black privilege or white privilege?
I was going to say, I don't think there is. Is there Black privilege at all? I don't think there is any. There's none. No, there's none. So if we want to talk about white privilege, when I first heard the term was about 10 years ago. And I didn't know what it meant. I thought, well, they must mean wealthy white people. That must be what that means. Mm-hmm. But then I started thinking about it. I really thought about it. I do a lot of meditation, and I thought, what does it mean to be gifted with something? Privilege means a gift, right? You're given something that you didn't earn or ask for, right? So it hit me in the middle of an afternoon one day. Oh, my first job when I was 16. My grandmother worked for the school board. I was in Tampa, Hillsborough County, so I'm not too far from Lakeland there, Marc. So, I didn't have to apply for that job. My grandmother wasn't a wealthy woman. It doesn't matter. She was white, and she had connections. And quite frankly, in that office way back in the mid-'70s, I don't know that we had any Black employees there at that time. I'm sure it's more diverse now, but back then it wasn't. So all I had to do was show up, right? But this didn't hit me till I'm thinking about it. How many people of color get that chance? Okay, that's probably zero. There's not that chance, right? Because that, just 2 days ago, somebody told me about that book, White Fragility.
Hold on, Lisa. I think that goes back to the whole implementation of affirmative action.
Right.
Absolutely. You know what I mean? They decided to implement something where it's like, oh, you have to hire, but then that turns into, are you hiring me because I'm qualified or am I a token?
That's not
that's what people used to play the corporate games with me, was like on that with the we'll hire you, because you're Black, but then when you try to basically move up, and for those that live in Georgia, the Atlanta area, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just want to say
no, go ahead. No, please.
It was I would notice that at the properties, I did property management for about 5 years, just kind of keeping food on the table and whatnot. It was really interesting to me that they would only hire Black women to be as much as the assistant manager, but they would never give them their own property. And I knew Black women that were they were more than qualified. And it almost kind of comes back. I was even as we were talking, I was looking up Black conventions. They knew how to run the property like the back of their hand. They knew every resident's name and when was the best time to pick up their rent, and if they needed food. They knew the property and they loved those people. But the corporate wigs that were over the property management companies, they would never let them become a manager. They just wouldn't give them that type of power. So it's just that type of, we're doing everything that we can to survive and to thrive the country, but it's but the benefit of our work, we never really get to see. So I just wanted to land that.
Yeah, no, the point I was trying to make is that there's you have to have ownership, and there's no ownership. Like people say Black communities, but do they get to own anything?
Right.
It feels I'm not sure, because I'm not in the community per se. I'm just observing. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to learn, right? But it feels
they don't own it. The bank owns it.
Yeah, it feels like that's my point. Right.
If you don't have the deed and you have the paid in full stamp, you don't own it. And even if you own your property, even if Marc owns his property and Javonna and Erik don't own their property and they all live next door to each other, it's still not a Black community, a Black.
I hear you. I do hear you. And I'm really late.
Times when they're like, oh, don't burn down your own. They're burning down, they're looting, they're rioting in their own. It's not ours.
Right.
It's not our community. It's not.
And I think most
the bank owns it.
And I can't speak for all white people, of course, but I think a lot of us don't understand that or don't get it. I'm like I say, when I first heard the words white privilege, I really thought about it. Here's what I came up with. When I walk out the door, I never have to, no matter what I achieve in my life, I never have to worry about my skin color in any way, shape, or form interfering with that. In any way, shape, or form, becoming a part of that. When somebody sees me, it isn't an automatic assumption about really anything. And if there is an assumption, it's probably not in any way, shape, or form negative, unless I do something. I have to do something, right, for somebody to condemn me in some way.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's going to take white women, not even white men. It's going to take white women to fix this issue or even start the bridge, because.
And again, no pressure.
No, I mean, no pressure, but that's what it's going to take, because at the end of the day, you can ask Emmett Till, you can ask the guy who was the root cause of them burning down Black Wall Street in Tulsa. If in fact any Black person would say anything derogatory, or they thought they said anything derogatory about their queens, they was going to burn the city down. Every Black person in the way was going to get it, right? So the same way Black men protect their white women, us Black women protect our Black men.
Yeah.
The white women are the ones birthing these men out. Their education and what they tell these Black men or white men or white sons, and that's where it's got to start. If a chain of white women stood in front of these Black protesters, name me one officer that's going to fire into that. They're not going to do it.
Right.
They're not going to shoot a white woman. They're not. You know what I mean? They may deal with you later, but they're not going to shoot you to get to us. It's not going to happen.
Talking about shooting, has anybody had any really bad dreams? Part of it, they say, is the pandemic, and part of it is all this awfulness, right?
Is it bad dreams?
Bad dreams. Really bad dreams lately, right? Nightmares, right? But here's something interesting. Shortly after this happened, about 2 days after it was after the Ahmaud, or it was after George Floyd, after he died. And like everyone, I couldn't go to sleep, and it was okay. So I had a nightmare, but it really wasn't a nightmare, because in my nightmare, there's a lot of power in it, right? In the nightmare, I did something that I, as a nonviolent person, as a person who takes a vow every year with my little Pax Christi group that does, peace and social justice, right? We take a vow of nonviolence, right? Not supposed to use violent words or violent things. That's kind of gone by the wayside the last few weeks. I've been cursing and been very angry. And, if I was well enough, I take care of an 81-year-old mother-in-law, so I can't go and protest. I usually don't miss a single march or protest, but I haven't been in person. We're taking care of her. There's still COVID, so whatever. But I can remember looking at the things and thinking, if I was there, it wouldn't take much for me to pick up a rock. And I know everybody is probably outside agitators, whatever. I might be the outside agitator. I don't know. I was pissed off and mad. So one night I had this dream. And in the dream, I just go into the courtroom, and no one questions me, right? I guess no one questions me. But I walk in and I know that there's a gun. I don't own a gun, by the way. But in the dream I do. And it's in my right pocket, and I pull it out and I shoot that officer in the face. Okay? I have family members who are in law enforcement. They are not close family members, but they are people I respect and love, and they're in Florida. And when I woke up, I wasn't in a cold sweat. I wasn't scared, right? And there's a point to this that gets to Black versus white imagery in just a second here. Anyway, but when I woke up, I was shocked that I could dream that, because it's so violent. But I was also shocked that I felt good about it, that it felt empowering. And then I happened to be on Facebook the next day, and I was reading what a dear friend of mine had written about a dream she'd had. She's African American. She's a really beautiful poet and writer, and she's amazing. And her dream was very different than mine. In her dream, she's being dragged out of her car, and she woke up at the moment that she got tased. And I thought to myself, there's the difference. In my dream, I get to be powerful, and I get to take care of it. And in her dream, she's the victim. She's the one who gets dragged out of her car.
That's the reality. That's the white privilege versus the Black culture, what we deal with. So you're dreaming the white privilege, and she's dreaming her reality.
Right.
And then the other side of that too is, in your mind, we could never imagine walking into a courtroom,
right?
Detectives with no gun. You know what I mean? That ain't, we not even about to drink like that. We couldn't even fathom that. We're going to get stopped and tackled at the metal detector. Whereas in your world, you know what I mean? You might be able to, you understand what I'm saying? And I think
it's why I mentioned it. I'm making myself very vulnerable here.
Yeah, no,
I feel bad about even dreaming it. Like, who am I to even imagine?
If you're dreaming that, imagine the dreams that George Floyd's family's having. Imagine the dreams that a lot of these little Black boys are having. You know what I mean? Waking up in cold sweats because they don't think their lives matter. Imagine the mothers. you know what I mean, that are sitting here trying to figure out how do you explain to your Black kids not to hate white cops, and not like, how do you, it is very traumatizing. And I guess that goes back to, I guess, Officer James and Sharon, what do you guys, like when you see the unrest going on, what do you guys feel you can do to personally stop, you know, this, or personally like get into the trenches? Like, how do you feel you can make a difference? Do you feel like they're right in looting? Do you feel like they're wrong for looting? Do you feel like, because in my opinion, there's three types of people out there. There's the protesters, there's the looters, and there's the rioters. You know what I mean? We can't lose focus, you know what I mean, on the fact that the protesters everybody has a job to do. You know what I mean? But do you feel that all of that has created this change movement? That's for Officer.
You can go ahead. You can go ahead.
Well, I feel, you know, I believe in the march and the protest, but I believe that some people are going in business for themselves and using a tragedy is an excuse to break into stores and steal and have no love for the cause, you know. And that's what irks me, you know. I just don't see why, you know, going inside and stealing and laughing and cutting up. That's not you know. I think if I was dying and someone was representing me like that, I would feel bad, because I want you to you know, to voice, talk, shout, whatever. But I don't want you hurting other people and breaking into stuff and stealing. So yeah, I feel like some people go in business for themselves over a tragedy.
Just about George Floyd? Do you honestly think that all of this is just about that?
No, I just feel like, you know, I feel like some people are just taking advantage of it. It's like, oh, you know, here's a pass. I can blend, you know, like I said, there's bad apples and people just blend in, and instead of going with the crowd, they divert and break into stuff. And yeah, I'm not cool with that. But you know, with the peaceful marching and you know, just get it out there. You know, what's the saying? Sometimes better let it out than to keep it in, because you're going to.
So again, that's what I'm saying. So everybody, y'all really honestly think that all this that's going on has to do with George Floyd? Like,
no,
really?
It's 400 years of being oppressed.
It is not only about George Floyd. It is racism, brutality. It is everything that we have been dealing with for years on years on years. It is not just George Floyd.
Yeah, go ahead, Erik. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I just want to say real fast. You asked the question in the beginning, and I kind of had the spot. What has happened? What's different with this time is that we have no distractions, as our officer was saying earlier. There's no distraction right now, and so it's the same thing that we've been seeing. But the fact that now we're forced to watch it, you know, we've already basically been on house arrest, you know, because of COVID-19, and we're not out of the woods with that yet. And then this happens in the midst of that going on. So it's like this compounded stress that everyone is feeling, which is why the riots did the way that it did. Basically, we became like a pressure cooker. And so right now, every race has to see what's going on. And to that cop that did that to George Floyd, it wasn't so much that it happened, because we've seen murders that have taken place, you know, on camera, you know, many times now. It was the audacity for him, like we were saying, that he relished in it while we're on house arrest, trying not to catch a cold because we don't want to die. Like, it's all this going on, and we got to see that on top of this. So then it literally becomes a visceral reaction to everyone that is watching, and no one can escape it. And the whole world is under it, you know. So even like all of the protests that are happening in other countries, the whole planet Earth is on house arrest right now. So all of us are like, oh, you gonna do that? Oh, we're all going to react to it. So it's, as much as I hate where we are, I don't like that we're contained like we are. What I have to find in it is the appreciation that it finally brought to light something that we've been saying over and over and over again. And now you're seeing everyone all over the globe that are finally bowing and kneeling in respect and in voicing what's going on with this racial issue.
So I guess that goes back to Sharon. Do you feel like what they're doing is okay? Do you feel like you could agree with the protesting, the rioting, the loot? Do you? Or
what I told one of my friends that I was having a conversation with yesterday. I'm an angry woman. I'm an angry woman. I don't fight people a lot, but I get angry and I throw things and I break things and I cuss and I scream. So I can see the anger and the frustration. I get mad like that over stupid personal matters. We're talking about hundreds of years of oppression.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I could see some shit down over that. I could see that happening. And so I told a friend, do I condone what's happening? The violence and the looting and what have you? No. Do I condemn it? Also no. And that's because at this point in my journey, what I'm trying to do is be an ally. And if speaking out against it is not helping anything, the people that I know, the people who are in this fight, they're not doing that stuff. But they're angry enough, just like you are. They're angry enough. They could do it. If they didn't have things to lose, if going to jail wasn't a fear for them, if being attacked by the police wasn't a fear for them, a lot of my friends would be doing it. I might be out there with them doing it, but a lot of us have too much to lose to be out there doing that.
Yeah.
And so me condemning those actions, it doesn't help the cause. All it does is divert the attention, and that's not what I want to do right now. The attention needs to be on the actual issue. And I don't necessarily believe that everybody that is out there doing those things is even doing it for the right cause, which is equality and social justice. I think a lot of them are doing it just because they're anti-government. And I'm bringing in Antifa, basically, is what I'm saying here. Is I think there are a lot of outside agitators who have completely other motives here.
Yeah.
All getting blamed on the Black community.
Absolutely.
And I mean, just today on Facebook that said, I guess it was supposed to be written from the perspective of the white community talking to the Black community. And it said, you had our support when the officer killed George Floyd, but you lost it when you started rioting and looting. And I'm like, not if you were in it for the right reason. They would have never lost your support, because it doesn't change the inequality. It doesn't change the lack of justice. None of that changes anything. And that's why I don't even discuss it. It's irrelevant. That's angry people doing what they're doing to express their feelings, and they can do that. That's not the issue. So my whole thought on it is stay focused on the issue, and that's not.
I think everybody's going to divert because the issue is too uncomfortable.
It is.
At the end of the day, we're going to focus on George Floyd and that officer. That is a symptom of the problem.
Yeah.
To fix the problem.
The problem.
Because just like Trump, I can't take him, but in small controlled doses. He is I can't. He is the symptom of
the problem.
He's not the problem. You know what I mean? Only a person can get up there and do that if he is one person. He has a bunch of other people believing the same stuff. There is a core issue that has to be fixed. And I feel like even with them saying you lost my support when you started rioting, looting, okay, so then I could say, police officers, you had my support when you were justifiably arresting people.
Right. You
lost my trust and my support and my funding when you started going out and lynching Black men.
Thank you.
And snatching and you see what I'm saying? So if a small group of people can take their support away from us, then what does that say about this small group of police officers that they keep trying to say, oh, it's just a little bit. So it goes both ways. But again, we always end up at the bottom. Mm-hmm. You're only going to support us when it's convenient and it looks cute to do so. I've deleted more friends on my page for saying things like, oh my gosh, but I have 2 Black friends, I could never. Oh, my friend. Okay, but if you have 2 Black friends, if you've never had this conversation with your Black friends, they're not your friends. Right. I should be able to talk to my white counterparts about the oppressive behavior that I experience. I have to find myself, I have to say, Lisa, when you go into this room, don't talk too loud because they're going to think you're angry. Make sure that when you talk, that because when I get passionate, I'm like, oh no, they didn't. Yes, they did. And everybody's like, wait a minute, is she mad? Is she okay? Is everything good? You know what I mean? So you can't even be your true, authentic self in different environments. You have to be the biggest chameleon. We should get the award for being the best chameleons, because we had to bend and break and slide.
We do.
And you got to do all that stuff just to be seen.
We're not allowed to have feelings, and that's what you were saying. Like with the riots, we're not allowed to have feelings. When the cop pulls us over, we're not to have a feeling. We're not allowed to have feelings. So it's kind of like, even I was one where I was like, yo, why y'all tearing stuff up? I mean, just because of just how I am. But then you had to put it in a different context and say, if you're never allowed to have a feeling, this is for any living being, and you cage that thing up, again, it's like a pressure cooker. Yeah. After a while, it's going to react, and we've never been given the chance to react to what's going on. So it's like, now I'm glad for these reformative conversations. We have to be given that moment, that space to react. Did anyone see that video of, I can't remember, the instant, but the white lady that was cussing out the white cop? I don't know if anybody saw that. When I tell you, did you see that video?
Yeah, I saw it.
It was like she went ballistic and called him everything. And the thing was, she was allowed to react. At the end of the day, I think he gave her a warning or whatever it was and let her, go on her way. But that moment, she was allowed to express that human emotion. And it's not even so much just the injustice, but just that we're never allowed to react. And that, I think that's where it hurts a lot of us a lot more. It's just we can't feel everything that we want to feel.
And I think that's why Black people just turn up the way and turn out the way they do.
Yeah.
And I feel like white people are afraid, and since we're being transparent, I feel like white people are afraid of Black emotion. I don't care what situation you put them in. I don't care how you do it. I think when we start reacting, something on the inside is like, whoa, Nelly, hold up. What's going to come behind this? When all we're doing is express, we're animated and we're just expressing ourselves. You know what I mean? But it doesn't always work out that way. And it's funny how officers can understand how a white child, a white teenager can be bullied for 4 months and go in and shoot up a school. They'll go in and bring him out alive.
Yeah.
Over 4 months of being bullied. That's it. He comes out alive. But you looking at somebody who's unarmed,
right?
Who has been born and bred over 400 years of oppression.
Absolutely.
And he don't get a pass.
It's like,
oh, well,
you can't feel anything.
Because they can't connect to it. They can't connect to it. And so I don't understand, what is it about Black people? There was a question on there that one of my white friends wanted to ask. It was, why are Black people so angry? Why are we so angry? And it's like, why not?
Are we really angry though? Do we want to use the word angry? Are we angry all the time? Or is it that our what we've been through, what we've seen, and how we've been treated just gives us a different disposition? Are we really angry? You know what I mean? Are we angry all the time? I'm not angry all the time.
Are we angry, or are we processing? I think it's more processing.
And yes, the things that we've been through makes us a little bit different from our white counterparts. You know what I mean? We're not singing Kumbaya. We're not all giddy all the time because of the things that we've experienced. If you're constantly being beat down or kicked while you're down, you're not going to be, oh, hi, what's up? Sometimes it just, or in the workplace, like he mentioned earlier, if you're not getting the promotion that you're looking for, but someone else got it that is a different race, are you going to go into the workplace happy every day?
Right.
No. And you may not be angry, but you'll have a different disposition.
And I think that part, me and Sharon was having a conversation, and when I resigned from the place of employment that we were both at, they had pulled me in a room and they were asking me like, well, why? Why? I couldn't tell them the truth. You know what I mean? I just had to say, I just don't think this is just, well, you're getting it and you're doing fine. Like I can't even tell you why, because I know that if I tell you that, because if they say one more thing out here about Barack Obama, about Black people, about how we wear our hair and these little, or I come in here and you keep touching my hair, like little stuff like that. If I say that, then you're gonna think I'm making it a race issue. then I'm going to be the one, oh, that she always has a problem, or you can never tell. So when you're in a work environment where you can't be your authentic self and you can't say what you really want to say, you're coming to work day after day, taking hit after hit after hit that you can't express because the people around you don't get it and they don't know. And all they've been trained to do is put it in black and white. So if you have a problem with what I'm saying, then you must think we're racist. If you say that I did that, oh, you're just being sensitive. But then if I say something about your culture and I say, oh, you must have some deep-seated, deep-rooted issue. You don't like white people. So you're stuck in a box where you have to process your feelings. You have to swallow whatever it is you're feeling and try to work with people that you want to like and you want to believe that they just have no clue. You try to educate them and then they don't want to hear it. They're like, that couldn't be. Ain't no racism. What are you talking about? This is 2020. What do you mean racism? There's no racism.
Yeah.
And then you're looking at these people and you're wondering, like, how do we ever come out of this? Because if you leave it to me at this point, I say separate everybody. Give us our own community. You have your own community and let us just be. Because that's the point that you're pushing my mind to, when it's not that I don't love them. It's not that I don't love them. I have plenty of people from all races that I interact with. But you get to a point where explaining isn't working. Mm-hmm. Trying to submit isn't working. Mm-hmm. Protesting peacefully is not working. Mm-hmm. Tearing stuff up ain't working. Trying to have these conversations, prayerfully, they will start to work, but they haven't been working. So what do you do? And how do we move beyond this point? How do we move beyond? Because personally, I say burn it all down. That's where I was at. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I'm like, just whatever, burn it down. It ain't gonna make it right, but being peaceful ain't right either. So I mean, it's like you dang it, do that. That was my attitude, right?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that because when we were speaking about it earlier. So when Dr. Martin Luther King, when he was assassinated, they rioted, and within 8 days, the legislation that they were trying to get passed the whole time got passed.
Right.
And I'm just going to be honest with you. I do not think, in the bottom of my heart, that if we just did another peaceful march, that these sweeping legislations, the Bank of Americas, and everybody doing these sweeping donations, I could take a lie detector right now, and I don't believe that people would have been arrested as quickly. You wouldn't be getting any of this legislation. So it's like you don't want people to lose businesses and this and that. But what any soldier will tell you is that there's casualties in every war. There are casualties. You don't want to see it, but I honestly do not believe if stuff wasn't getting burnt down,
right?
That because what happened is we've been uncomfortable, but what it is it's gotten to a point where, and I'm just going to keep it honest, where not everybody feels like it, but it's got to a point where people feel like, listen, if we have to worry about our sons and daughters walking out the door every day, we're going to create an environment where everybody's got to worry about their sons and daughters. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like if we have to worry about our sons and daughters walking out of the door every day, then we're going to create an environment where everybody has to worry, because it's not enough that we're uncomfortable. We have to make everybody uncomfortable, and I don't.
That's a really good way to look at that.
I hear you.
Really good way to look at that.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to look at it that way, and I definitely agree.
I don't think they would have made the arrest like that, or the legislation.
But I think that's why we're getting such a response.
Right.
Because people say violence isn't the answer, but that's not true.
That's not true.
If that was the case, then why do we have armies?
Yeah, we have an army.
Everybody knows when they bomb Japan, when they bomb, or whatever we do, talking is only going to get you so far.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with that.
At some point, you got to tear. I mean, it is what it is. People may not like it, but I think we've gotten people to a point where everybody in America is uncomfortable.
Because
I think white people are afraid. I think they're afraid because it's like, okay, it's not stopping. We're on day 10. Like, they're still not there. They just set LA on fire. Like, yo, what else can we do? I mean, they tried having the officers take a knee. I don't want to see another person take a knee because when Kaepernick tried it, y'all fired him. Y'all owe Kaepernick an apology. You owe him his job back. You gotta. If you want to make it right, you got to start making it right. You got to
go back and make it right
and start making it right, because right now it only appears like, okay, just do whatever they want. They do whatever they want you to. They want us to do to make it stop.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't think that we as white people get to tell you how to feel or how to express that emotion. And if sometimes it boils into violence, I don't blame you. That said, I think there are some outside people who don't really care, some people who are outside, but I don't blame you one bit. As I said, a day or two after this whole thing came down with poor Mr. Floyd, I, again, it is over 450 years plus of frustration, of violence and cruelty. And quite frankly, the looters historically are all white. It's white people who did the looting. It's white people who did the theft of property. It's white people who appropriated other cultures for their use. It's white people who built this country on the backs of your ancestors.
Of looting. They went
Absolutely.
from a different.
For
so
sure.
I'm saying we learned a lot of this stuff.
It is.
But I'm not saying that it's right. I'm not saying it's right. But I am saying that war sometimes and violence at times. I mean, even if for those of us who are Christians, I mean, if you look at the Old, God was wiping out whole nation and starting over. You know what I mean? You get to a point where talking and reasoning and rationalizing doesn't work. So as we close this up, we may have to come back for a part 2. But as we close this up, what do you think we can do to try to bridge the racial divide, to try to build some sort of trust with law enforcement, what can we do to move past this point? Because America will never be the same after COVID-19. After this civil unrest, it will not be the same. So what can we do to try to build a web of sort to move beyond this so that we don't have an even bigger divide?
My thought is, I'll jump in first and I'll get out of the way. My thought to it is exactly what you're doing right now. I've made a post today where I have like a bunch of squares that are just perfectly lined. That's how I think a lot of people want this to go. They want the conversations to be very black and white, very cut and dry, and that's not what it is. And then I had a second picture, a puzzle, like a jigsaw. We have got to figure out how all of our experiences work together. We've got to figure out, like, there's a whole gradient of things that we've dealt with, from the person that's been the most hurt by law enforcement to the most privileged white person in every race and culture in between. These conversations are going to be, I believe, revolutionary, so that whatever we can do in our part of the world to touch the people that we can, we have to do it. And then we have to get ready to know that as far as voting and going into this next term, we're going to have to rebuild this country from the bottom up. And the difference this time is that it's going to take all of us pitching in to do it without an oppressive force. Now, I know that sounds very utopia-like, but we've got to start working together, and these conversations help.
I agree. These conversations definitely help, and they should be had more often. I personally do not believe we will ever end racism, because people, just like we're having this conversation about trying to end brutality and racism, there's someone at home breeding and telling their children and teaching their children how to hate. So I don't think we will never, ever end that. But what we can do as people of color, we can try to get in those different positions of power, have more Black police officers policing their own communities, more Black judges, and hopefully we can make a difference that way. As far as the rioting, I agree with the protesting. I do not agree with the rioting and the looting. I don't believe that solves anything. Like I said, get people of color in these high positions of power, and hopefully we can make a change that way. But looting, I don't see how it correlates to making a change.
Officer James?
Like I said before, I think it comes down to zero tolerance for negative retention. And if the top heads turn a blind eye, then the whistleblowers should be given immunity, not lose their jobs. And I don't care if you're day one on the department and you see the senior officer who's been there for 35 years do something and violate somebody's civil rights, you tell it and you get their asses out of there. That's the only way. And, as far as Georgia training, I say about the last 5 years, we have to have a minimum of 20 hours a year of training to keep our arrest powers. And I say within the last 5 years, we have what we call a dashboard. It consists of firearms, community policing, de-escalation, and use of force. And I don't care if you have 1,000 hours of training. If you haven't completed those 4 particular blocks of instruction, you lose your powers of arrest. With that being said, you could take a horse to the lake, but you can't make him drink the water.
That's right.
They said the officers that the Atlanta incident, they just got through completing a de-escalation. So, and like I said, it comes to negative retention and training. And if you violate, you do anything outside that training box, then you're fired. So that's what it comes down to. We got to get rid of negative retention and negative training. We got to improve those 2 things as far as the law enforcement perspective.
Marc?
I think that something that the officers spoke at the beginning, I think that that's a big part. Like, I can already tell, like a lot of you, that you've had a lot of experience around being around the African American community. I think that if you're not in a situation where you're comfortable being around other ethnicities, then I think that has to be vetted properly. Like when people are being in a position as like an officer and the people above, I think that they need to be vetted. Like, you need to check their social media. Because I mean, if everybody could find that this officer had things in paraphernalia online, that he had problems with a certain segment of the population, then you shouldn't be policing in communities where you're going to be dealing with that. It's going to be impossible for you to do your job to the best of your ability. But outside of that, I think that Black folks, and even especially Black men, they need to be humanized a little bit more. Because, for instance, if you're not around Black people a lot, like the officer and others, then you're gathering your perception of a Black person from the media, and the media doesn't put us in a flattering light. You're basically taking your perception from professional athletes, rappers, and maybe a couple Tyler Perry movies. Like the fool, and when I say this, no, literally, I'd say
you're
like,
right. You're right. You're absolutely right.
You're right.
As a Black man, the media probably portrays 30% of the spectrum of what different types of Black men are out there.
Yes.
But if what you see is athletes, rappers, and then the criminals that's on the front page of the paper, then when you see somebody like me get on the elevator, like real experience, or you see somebody like me who gets on the elevator who has tattoos and who has, twisting locks, and you just saw somebody who looks like that on the front page for doing a robbery, you're gonna try to disappear in the elevator.
Yeah.
But because you haven't really shown the spectrum of what the Black man can be. Like so in the media, the conglomerate media is really controlled by like 90%. It's controlled by one entity. So it's kind of like, it's going to be important for, like you were saying, the mothers and everybody to educate people on what we contributed to this country. We're not just lynching. I'm not lynching. We're not just smooching off this country. We have sweat equity. You know what I mean? Like, we're not just smooching the country. We have sweat equity into this country. We've provided inventions that everybody has used, from the stoplight to your security systems. Like, we created those things. Like, we've really, so when you actually paint us in a light, subconsciously, you're going to have a better opinion that we're productive members of society. But I feel like in the underbelly, some people feel like we just want to be on Section 8. We just want, we're living off your taxes. You're paying taxes for us to be on Section 8 and this and that. You're on Section 8 living better than I do. And all, I've heard these things. Like, I want people to really see that we have contributed. Like, we want our piece of the American dream just like everybody else. We don't want to be pushed ahead of you. We just want, like you said, equal footing. Like, we're productive members of society, and we have helped build this country. Like, what makes this country great is that it's a melting pot and not just one people. The difference is, we should appreciate the things that make us the same, but also appreciate the differences as well. Like, that is America. Like I said, my father is from another country. He grew up under a dictatorship. He grew up under martial law. He knows what these things are. He came to this country for a better opportunity. So to see certain things that people would think that we're tilting towards certain things like martial law and this and that is very alarming to him, because America is supposed to be the place where we all can be different and have a fresh start and have the same opportunities. So I think that it's important that Black men and Black people as a whole get more humanized. And if media is not going to accurately show us who we are, then it's going to be important for people to be open-minded and go do the research and be open to having those conversations so they can see what we've helped to build together. That's my stuff.
Thank you, Marc.
That's it.
Yeah, right. In a nutshell. Sharon, Lisa, is there anything that you guys can see that if it's already been said, then we can say that. But is there anything that you think you could contribute or what needs to happen to kind of, you know what I mean? I can give y'all about 60 seconds. Let me see.
Okay. Do you want to go, Sharon?
Yeah, I was going to say that I think that I would like to see a person or a group take control of this movement, because we can talk about justice and equality all day long, but until we put something in writing and we all agree on a written agenda and we start speaking on the same agenda, it's just words. I want just equality. What do you mean by that? So we need somebody that's in charge of the movement as a whole, whether it's a person or a group. I mean, we need a new Dr. King. That's what we need. We need somebody to step up and say, I'm leading this charge, and people can look to me and we'll all get a unified message, because I think right now people are just hearing the words justice and equality, and a big part of the problem is that people don't realize there's a lack of justice and equality because they've never experienced it. So let's put it in writing. Let's show what it is. Let's get a unified group that's not just saying two words that we're looking for. We're putting down these are our list of demands, and let's start negotiating.
Got it.
Well, and we have plenty of, to your point, we have plenty of really strong, good Black leaders right now, quite frankly, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, because aren't I the one who said, what in the world do I have to contribute being just this garden variety? I have a phrase that I use when something's too white. I'll call it Whitey McWhite. If a restaurant is too bland or something, I'll say Whitey McWhite. So Whitey McWhite here, just saying, I think if we can celebrate the differences, and by that I mean actually invest in them, something really small that I didn't think of until the other day is maybe go out of your way, go to a Black-owned restaurant, find out what restaurants are owned by people of color, and make sure you patronize those and support those businesses. Put white dollars behind Black businesses. That makes a difference. It will make a difference. Put I saw hashtag Black. I saw hashtag Bank Black. Bank Black. Have you heard of this? Hashtag Bank Black. I didn't know to look for a bank that's owned by Black people. That never occurred to me. But when I saw that, I thought, oh, you know what? I'm getting ready to open up a little savings account for my grandniece. Yeah, I could open it there as easily somewhere else. It's not much, but it's a start. And if enough people did that, then you're actually investing in communities that maybe aren't exact. Like I live in Alpharetta. It's pretty diverse in the neighborhood that I'm in, I'm proud to say. But it's still not an area. I mean, we're well funded here. You know what I'm saying? You need to put your money where it's not as well funded. It needs to go there. We're all together. This is all Atlanta. This is Atlanta North or whatever, but it's still, you know what I'm saying? We're all here. And if everybody could do just a little bit, it would make a huge difference. I really think it would. I don't want to sound too kumbaya here or, Pollyanna, but honestly, but things like this, these talks, part 2, part 3, absolutely. I feel so enlightened, and thank you so much for all of your input, and thank you for your service too, Officer James.
Thank you for your service, and thanks for being one of the cool ones, because you took me under your wing. We worked together.
Hey, why don't you just tell them a little bit about our relationship? From your perspective, how did you see me as?
I honestly, I don't want to say it the way I'm going to say it, because I'm probably going to get nailed to the cross. But I was like, man, this is a Black guy in a white body. Like when I first met you, I was like, he came in, and I'll never forget. It was the song by Tamar. She had took the beat from, I think it was Biggie.
Yeah.
He came in singing, and I said, let me find out. Like, let me find out something about the culture. And he just, honestly, like I was always able to come to you and talk to you. And he was always very welcoming and so I never, and believe it or not, before coming to you, I had experienced some negativity. And see, because I was around you every day and every shift, it that's why you were the first person I thought to call when we were going to do this. I was like, I know my friends are upset. You know what I mean? And if I bring a group of people together, it has to be with somebody that they're going to respect and understand, like, you're not this, person that's for this other side. Because, granted, 27 years on a force, and you around a bunch of black folks and you ain't never had to use no force, man, when I say I salute,
that's a salute.
Yeah.
That's major.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you're seeing the total opposite on TV. Same way with Sharon when I first met her. You know what I mean? I was stressed out at this job, okay? I mean, I'm stressed. She would always smile and be like, "You're doing great, girl." Like, I mean, it was always nice when you meet those kinds of people. Because anybody who knows me knows I got a problem. You know what I mean? I am Afro power to the people, fist up. You know what I mean? But because I've met so many welcoming, warm, white people, it makes me bring that down a notch. And I felt like if it could do it for me, it's got to be able to do it for other people who are going to watch.
Absolutely.
Because everybody's not the same. But for the longest, I thought I was like, get them away from me. Like, get them away from me. You know what I mean? Because of the experiences and because you see certain things when you're hurt. So I have to say, with all that being said, even with Lisa, when I would see Lisa's post, I was like, I gotta reach out to her because she's definitely a part of the solution. She's really trying to understand. When people are trying to understand and trying to get it, we gotta bridge them all together and see what we can do as a whole. I would implore everybody that's on here to talk to the people that are immediately around you and kind of maybe show them the video. Everybody's not, we are educated. We do know how to put sentences together without being thugs and criminals. I mean, when you have a president who is calling, you know what I mean, the acts that are going on and you're calling people thugs and criminals, that's all people are going to see. You know what I mean? But nobody's looking at the criminal behavior of going across the Atlantic and stealing people and bringing them over here and stealing the land from, but you don't look at it that way. So I think we all owe it to each other and owe it to our society to make a difference with the people that are immediately around us. We will have this conversation again. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for supporting me and having this conversation, especially in the heightened era of the protests and the rioting and the looting. I love each and every one of you guys. And for those watching, please stay tuned for part 2. We will come back and try to rehash some of these topics and get to some of the questions that I didn't get to. In the meantime, do your part, support your local Black businesses, talk to your children, educate them, look up the quality and equity that African Americans have brought to this community and to this nation, and maybe, just maybe, you'll have a different perspective on those that are neighboring with you. Until next time, we'll see you guys later. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Nice meeting you.